Dunn spun away, looking, shooting, Dunn with a goal!
Welcome back to Diaspora United. Welcome to our YouTube channel. We didn't give you guys a huge welcome last time, but thanks for coming. Today we are going to be talking about the Champions League final this Sunday, officially on Paramount Plus for our US subscribers. Officially on Paramount Plus, which
only announced it 3 days before. It's fine.
We're not going to get into that because I honestly think it was a thing where they were like, we don't have this. And they were like, yeah, you do. And they were like, oh, snap, we do. That's how I fundamentally feel. That's what actually happened.
I mean, it feels right, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I was like, dang. But yes, we'll be talking about the Champions League final between Barcelona and Chelsea. So a quick run over of scores. Chelsea went through against Bayern Munich, and Barcelona beat PSG to make it to the final. Both legs of both matches to me were really, really interesting and a lot of fun to watch. There was definitely a lot of learning opportunities for both teams. But right off the bat, let's start with PSG Barcelona. So André, like, what are you thinking about how Barcelona has played so far?
You know, I think the biggest question for Barcelona was everybody saw their league form and was like, what is this team? Like, how good are they really? La Liga has some pretty decent teams. I mean, we saw Atletico Madrid against Chelsea, gave us a little bit of an idea. And then we saw them play Manchester City. And it was like, oh, okay, this Barcelona team's kind of legit. So as it's progressed from there, I think they've really kind of shown to be really, I would probably say favorites on the balance of everything. I mean, I know Chelsea's had an amazing year, but you just look at that goal differential, you look at how they really suffocated and really, I won't even say suffocated. They just really stopped PSG from being able to play their game. I mean, Barcelona almost had 60% possession in both games. I think PSG took a total of 20 shots across both legs and only 4 were on target, 2 in each match. That's not the PSG that we're used to at all. And I think part of that was PSG missing some pieces. Like, I think Diani was a huge miss, but I also think Barcelona defended really well. So I think overall, you look at their goal scoring ability, which we know they have. They certainly know their route to goal. That league form is ridiculous. What 128 goals, 5 conceded in the league. So yeah, that's a goal differential for the math majors of 123.
Yeah, and they won
Makes no sense.
Yeah, and they won their I mean, they've already won the league. And the fun thing about this, if you didn't know, is that they still have like 5 more games to play.
I think they got 6 games to play, and they were celebrating the same time as Chelsea, who won their league on the last day of the season.
Which is wild, to say the least. I'm also like side-eyeing all the leagues in the Champions League, like, hello, let's get some synergy. So it's not like, hey, we're playing in a Champions League final. Hey, we still have like many more matches to go in the league. And yeah, I agree. I think they really did neutralize PSG, even though I do think PSG also kind of shot themselves in the foot, particularly in that second leg more than the first leg. I thought the first leg, even like ending 1-1, was kind of even on both sides, even though I do think PSG could have, really taken it to Barcelona, just given that they, had 2 chances, one off the post, one that just went wide when they pressed and got the ball and played it right down the middle. But especially in that second leg, honestly, Barcelona was just so dominant, like even just, out the gate, they scored their first goal in the 7th minute, I want to say then. So, and I think part of that also came from, I think PSG in the first half of this second leg also just got all the tactics wrong of really letting Barcelona play their game. Like, when you have a team that has a goal differential of 128 goals, you really don't want to let them do what they have been doing, and like especially in the league and them winning it so early and outright. They probably had a lot of teams that were just trying to sit in a low block and just like, they can't break us down. But it's quite clear that Barcelona could just break teams down. And so I think when PSG's coach brought in Alana Cook for the second half, shout out to Alana Cook, but also PSG really like started playing a little bit more of how we've seen PSG But yeah, Barcelona honestly was just super, super dominant. And the players that I'm looking forward, or I'm definitely going to be watching in this final, are Lika Martins and Jenny Hermoso, and also, of course, Aziza Oshoala, who is also just a baller. Just a baller. But yeah, honestly, Barcelona is like really running high, and I'd also probably tip it to them as favorites. But yeah, the match is going to be interesting. But so what did you think coming out of Bayern Chelsea, which the second leg was just, honestly, to me, both legs were kind of wild. Especially, I know, with the first leg and the technical problems, being like, oh dang. And then honestly, the second leg was just, what, 94 minutes, maybe 92, 93 minutes of chaos.
Yeah, it was pure chaos. The second leg was, and the first leg was just very interesting, I thought. It was, I can summarize, I was just stressed. Let's put it that way. I was just stressed. Bayern Munich had a whole lot of joy on Chelsea's left side. I think that was really unfortunate. I think Johnny Anderson really struggled in that match. Hannah Glass just really, really kind of torched her. They played like a interesting, I think it was almost like a three at the back, and they really let Hannah Glass just kind of go up and down that flank, and it really pinned Chelsea back. And even though the first goal, I thought the first goal in that match was, it had a lot to do with Hannah Glass, but also had a lot to do with the sun, because the way the shadows were on the pitch, the ball basically went from dark to light, like shade to light. And Berger jumped up to try and grab it, and I think she lost it when she was in air, because the ball all of a sudden was like being blocked by the sun, or the ball was blocking the sun, because she got her fingertips on it, and then it went through her hands, and that's when it got headed in on the doorstep. So that was interesting. But then Hannah Glass said, okay, fine, I'll just go ahead and score a banger so that there's no questions, and she did that. And Chelsea got hit with a couple bangers. Sarah Zadrazil in leg two scored their only goal with a ridiculous, I think that was the goal of the tournament. That goal was ridiculous.
Yeah, honestly, the entire tournament, when you see that goal, I'm not going to tell people to pause and go watch it, because they've probably already seen it, because it was on social for several days after. But the way she just hit that ball so sweetly, and like at first you think there's like a wicked deflection, but then when you watch it back, there's not. I was like, Bayern, do you score bangers only?
Apparently against Chelsea they do, because that it did one of my favorite things for a strike to do, is curve inside out. I love when that happens, and it was just like, as soon as it started curving out, it also started dipping, and that's when it hit the underside of the bar. I mean, it was just it was a ridiculous shot. But shout out to Chelsea. I mean, the match was hard. It was grueling. It was exhausting. I was actually worried about the league a little bit, because they had to play Tottenham like 3 days later, and then they had to play Reading and Manchester City. You know, since they only got that draw with Chelsea, like they could, if Chelsea dropped any points, City would have gotten the title. Yeah. So that Bayern match was like really important to win, obviously, to get to the final, but it was also really draining and could have really kind of derailed their season. So to me, shout out to them for really enduring that match. I mean, Fran Kirby was excellent, scored the first goal and scored the last goal. I think Jess Carter played really well, particularly in the second half. I think she was really, really strong in denying the ball, and getting herself. She got herself fouled for that for that set piece that Pernille Harder scored from, and her delivery from that was excellent. Bayern's a good team in the air, and they just hit them so quickly with such a flat and quick delivery that Bayern players didn't even jump. They were just standing there like, why is the ball in the net? And so I just think Chelsea played a brilliant match, and Emma Hayes got the game plan right from leg one to leg two.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, I'm always completely thrilled whenever Black players for Chelsea score. Like it's like, yay, goal. And I'm like, oh yay. Like there's like a little sprinkle on top of it that just gives me extra bits of joy. And yeah, that cross was really good. And then also going to the fourth goal, where I would say I thought the officiating was bad. Like the ref definitely missed a red card that like, and because she missed that, it did lead to Chelsea's fourth goal. But also I thought missed a penalty for each team, or especially like a penalty for Bayern, like at the closing stages of the match where I think it was still 3-1, so it was tied 3-3 on aggregate, and I was like, that's like a big penalty to miss.
Oh, I was shook too, because that was Magda doing that thing where she stepped in and did not get the ball, and I was just like, she's gonna point. I was in my head, I was like, she's gonna point to the spot. Don't be surprised, she's gonna point to the spot, and then the ref just never did.
Yeah, which was surprising. And then on the other side, so leading to the fourth goal, Bayern was having everyone up, all this stuff, trying to get the ball in the box, getting someone a header. Somehow it I think it was kind of like pinball in the box, and it came to Drew Spence, who had been subbed in the game. Drew Spence gets elbowed in the face, like strong elbow in the face. And I was like, ref, like, hello, ref, like that is a huge call to not make, but instead she plays the advantage. The ball goes to who? Aaron Cuthbert,
yep.
Who plays to Fran Kirby. And also during this entire sequence, the Bayern goalkeeper is just like hanging
out, just chilling,
just hanging out, like
not even in the attacking third, just in the midfield, just hanging out.
Just hanging out. And I mean, and I tweeted about this after when I was rewatching the game. I was like, someone please explain this to me, because I could understand like the keeper staying close, of like, maybe we're around the 18-yard box, maybe we're like fighting for, or like, it's like maybe there's a tackle and like the ball could come to us, but at that point in that sequence, you're quickly like, it's quite clear we don't have possession. Let me go, even if I can't make it back, let me go make an effort. But no, keeper was just like hanging out at the midpoint line, just like, hey. And I like watched it like 3 times, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, you probably can't make it. I mean, Fran Kirby is super quick, but I mean, even just the effort, because also there were like I don't know which 2 players were like sprinting back, but there were players sprinting back, but instead the keeper was just like, hey.
I give the ref the assist on that one. And I also think that I think, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but if I remember correctly, I think that was the second time the keeper came up. And so he had to sprint the whole length of the field to get into the box. And I think the keeper was just like, not doing that again. And when the ref was just kind of holding the whistle and not making a call when the players were scrumming for it, and then Drew Spence gets that elbow to the face, she falls backwards directly onto her back after she got that elbow to the face. And normally, I mean, head injury, all these other things, like normally that just stops the game. But the ref just held their arms out like advantage. And it's like Chelsea's just like, okay, cool, we'll go ahead and take an empty net goal. That's fine. And I really think the keeper, they're not outfield players for a reason. So the awareness drops down, if you think of it like FIFA. The awareness ain't all that high in that area of the pitch. So I think they're just kind of like, what do I do? I'm kind of in a weird space. If we win the ball back, which we got decent numbers in midfield, maybe I can just get myself back in the box. Oh, there's Fran Kirby. Oh, this didn't work out at all.
I watched it like so many times being like, what are you doing, keeper? What are you doing? But yeah, and I think, and I mean, even if I weren't a Chelsea supporter, I think I would still be an Emma Hayes stan, just because there are so few women coaches in the game and coaching at just like an elite level that like you always want them to win, because it like, unfortunately we know this just with women's soccer in general, but it's like when one person does something great, then like you always see like the door start opening for more people. So it's like not just Emma Hayes, but also, her legacy. And I do think, even though from the first leg to the second leg, I thought Chelsea kind of adapted better to Bayern's attack, even though I will say, at least for me, for the most part, Bayern going forward didn't actually change that much between the first and the second leg. I just think for the second leg, they somehow just were not, scoring a ton, because I remember seeing in the first leg and in the second leg, like the same thing over and over and over again, where they would like somehow pinch in and then get honestly the ball wide to one of their forwards, most of the time Hannah Glass, and who was ever running on her side. And then like it was just like the kind of the same, especially in the midfield, like the same passage of play over and over. And I think part of it obviously was having Magda back and just like providing some defensive stability so that way Sophie Ingle could push up. But I did at some point I was like, this is like kind of the same thing I've already seen several times before. It just is not working right now.
I think Bayern got it wrong a couple times, and I think that Emma Hayes got it right, really right. I think in two legs, and this is what Emma Hayes is really good at for me, is not only does she analyze the game and set the team up for like much better in second legs, but she also counters your counter. She kind of anticipates what the other team is going to do and is able to handle it. And I think that Bayern actually gave her a big bonus because they didn't have Hannah Glass playing that high at all.
Right.
And in conjunction with that, Emma Hayes also replaced Jonna Anderson on the left side with Neve Charles, who is not a fullback, but is more physical, plays higher up the pitch, and can do more to kind of limit Hannah Glass's chances of getting on the ball, and can also keep up with her a little bit better. And I think that more than anything really stopped Bayern, because if you look at like the first leg, they didn't dominate in midfield the way that Wolfsburg did in the first leg against Wolfsburg. So it was really just those wide spaces that were really letting Chelsea down. And once we figured out how to stop the ball from really progressing down the flanks, Bayern didn't really have much else to do, especially because they altered their midfield game plan, and Emma Hayes was ready for that too.
Yeah, that is true. I don't know. I feel like once you like pick up on a pattern, you tend to see it over and over. And I felt like definitely at certain points in the second half, I was like, it's the same thing over and over and over again. And I will like, and having Neve Charles back there definitely did help, even though occasionally a few times she did get torched. I felt like both the fullbacks honestly just got torched a little bit. At one point I was like, smelling it on melanin crime right there. Stop.
Stein, stop it. Stop it. Leave Jess Carter alone.
I was like, she doesn't deserve this. But yeah, I will obviously have Emma Hayes in, but yeah, I do think those changes, like, I don't know, I was kind of surprised that Bayern didn't make as many changes as I like thought they were going to kind of like, I don't know, I kind of think about it as I feel like PSG going into their second leg made a few really big changes that obviously did not work out for them, while Barcelona was just like, we're gonna like score 7 goals on you, we're just gonna keep really doing what you're doing. I mean, they made a few changes, but I thought for the most part the huge stark difference in that game was just like PSG's game plan. And I feel like for the Chelsea Bayern game, Bayern didn't really do enough to be like, okay, they're going to anticipate us doing X, Y, and Z, so we're going to, try to get back at them by doing A, B, and C. But to me, that didn't really happen.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that, like, I do think you're right in trying to see a pattern, because I do think that Bayern, no matter their formation, had one thing that they really wanted to do. And once Chelsea adapted to that, in both personnel and formation, I think it was, well, I guess not necessarily formation, because it's kind of the same formation, but just different personnel. But Bayern didn't have any way to really react to that. And thank you. But still, I mean, regardless, I was going to say, everybody can kind of see I'm quite biased here. So got the Chelsea background. I'm really excited about this team. But anyway, I mean, the big thing for me was that Chelsea had to overcome a lot, particularly over the 2 legs. I mean, they lost the first leg. They got the early goal, and then that Zadrazil banger came, and it was just like deflating. And Bayern was all over Chelsea right after that. I mean, I really thought they had a chance to score a couple goals after that. And it was really G's goal, which was excellent. G had an excellent goal after that. Her free kick went into the wall. She just completely like readjusted, ran, and was first to the ball and put it to the other side of the net. Where the keeper was just kind of staring at it, rolling into the side netting.
Everyone just like all of a sudden, like everyone besides G was just like their legs turned to like cement. They were just like,
yeah. And it was like one of those slow motion 80s movement where everybody's running in slow motion, like, no.
Yeah, it was just like everyone was just like, I don't know. I mean, it kind of reminded me of, and actually, I do have another question for you about the PSG Barcelona game, but yeah, it was just kind of one of those moments where everyone's just like ball watching, being like, I don't know, like Bayern was like, no, and Chelsea was like, yes.
I think besides that, because that was just before halftime, and I think besides Fran Kirby's final goal, that of course just completely ended it. Of course, Bayern players were like they were despondent. They were just on the ground crying, and then the cameras were like, "Hey, let's fight." I was like, "Stop it! Get the
Leave
camera off
Bernstein
her."
alone.
Right? They were on Berenstain for a long time, but I think that their reaction to G's goal was their second like most deflating reaction, because after that they just were all kind of looking at each other with their hands up, like upset. I think I saw a player with their hands on her knees, like they were just looking around at each other like, what, how did that just happen to us? And it was just a really good reaction and clever ability from G, because she was not aiming there initially and she reacted quicker and changed her shot immediately and caught everybody off. And shout out to Melanie Loopholes too, because she stayed away from that ball. If she touches it, it's offside. So
Right.
yeah, I love G. I just love how fun of a player she is. And that was like her completely outfoxing the entire Bayern team.
Yeah, well, because I remember my notes, I wrote like G deserves to score, and then like 2 minutes later she did, and I was like, yes. But it was also, I can see how it was more deflating of like, you kind of did everything right, right, like you said, walk correctly, you jumped at the right time, and all of these things happen, and then you still get scored on, and you're like, are you joking? I also think Bayern messed up their karma when after how do you say her name? Zershim, the one who scored?
Zadrazil?
Zadrazil.
Zadrazil, yeah.
After she scored, she went to go celebrate with the bench, and I was like, you did it to yourself. You celebrated with the bench, like, and it's one thing, for example, the bench runs to you. She ran to the bench, and I was like, you did it too early. You did it.
You know what? Honestly, I can't even blame her for that, because if I score a goal like that, I'm taking off my shirt and I'm running out of the stadium. Like, it's just like, whatever you do after scoring a goal like that has to be okay, because that's like a once in a lifetime banger. And it was in a Champions League. Like, imagine if Bayern actually go through and that goal meant something. Like,
That's
I'm
true.
sure it still means something to her, but seriously, at that time, that was a goal that gave Bayern the advantage. So like, I don't blame her at all for any. So like, to me, regardless of how she ran to the bench, I still think her celebration was understated, because I would have lost my mind.
Oh, I would have also done that, but there was something about celebrating with the bench where I was like, it was just the of it. It was like, you guys think you have it in the bag now, which is like, I understand it because they
Yeah.
like had the advantage, but I was like, it is because she scored 30th around there, 30th minute.
Yeah,
And
I
I was
think it was
like,
about the half hour. It was, I think, about 15 minutes after Fran Kirby scored, and she scored around the 10-minute mark.
yeah. So I was like, it is too early for y'all to be celebrating like this. That was like my whole thing, but I was like, it's too early. But actually going back to the PSG Barcelona games, I just want to quickly talk about Barcelona's 2 goals, where really for both of them, for the first one, I think most of us would kind of agree that Ashley Lawrence was at fault. But then for the second one, the interesting thing to me from the commentators was that the blame was mostly placed again on Ashley Lawrence, even though to me it was like I call it like a comedy of errors of a lot of things happening that went wrong, but it just still being pinned on the same player and like, quote unquote feeding into the narrative of the game.
Yeah, and I really don't like when that happens and they really single out a particular player. I mean, I know that like post-game analysis and writers and when we get to do that, we do have to be fair. But like in the moment, I think it's really difficult to analyze a match. And I think when you're too confident and too assured to pick out one player, now, I mean, unless it's egregious. I mean, unless they just keep getting beat over and over again, like we talked about Jonna Anderson. That was pretty obvious. Hannah Glass was tearing her up. But when you look at those particular phases and those goals, I think that it was unfortunate, particularly for the second one, because yeah, if you just take that isolated phase of play, basically the shot,
Yeah.
you're gonna look at Ashley Lawrence and say, why weren't you there? But I think if you look at the entire sequence, you see a lot of things that happen for that goal. And you actually see both center backs having a chance to not allow that ball to even get there. And so the fact that all of that is ignored in real time, I can understand that in real time, because it is really hard to analyze soccer like live, especially when you have a live microphone that's going to people all over the world. Like that pressure, I don't want. I'd just be making weird noises when I saw great goals and stuff like that. That's all the commentary you're gonna get from me. I'm not gonna analyze anything. But I think that's why commentators sometimes should shy away from stuff like that, because I do think it unfairly painted Ashley Lawrence as the person most at fault. And I think if you look at that entire sequence, you probably put her third, maybe.
Right.
Maybe fourth.
And so that was the interesting thing that I was looking at it, because I remember for the first goal, I actually thought at first Liga Martins was offside when I first saw it, because when the ball was played, I was like, oh, she's offside, because Ashley Lawrence had stepped with her. Now, obviously, hindsight's 2020, she probably shouldn't have done it, but she and the center back close to her side, and then the other fullback had stepped a little bit, and so who was keeping her on side, as opposed to, because I'm, at least looking at the game, it was supposed to be, I guess PSG was supposed to have this, kind of high line, surprisingly not with a high press, but more of a high line. And the other center back kept Liga Martins on. And so it was for example, if she was in line, then it's oh, it would have been offside, it wouldn't have been a goal, which I thought, and obviously this is stuff that you can get when you're when you watch it one or two times, you're oh, this, even though for me, just watching it, I was oh, she's offside, and I was oh wait, no, she's not. Then yeah, with that second goal, I immediately noticed, as soon as, again, Liga Martins stepped in front of Ashley Lawrence, I was shouldn't have happened. But when I as soon as they did the replay, I was both center backs are ball watching. Both of them are ball watching big time. It would be one thing also, because when I did, kind of go back and look a little microscopically. But even I was okay, so let's say for one of them, they had a player over their shoulder and they peeked and saw the player. But then for the other one, I was you stepped the ball right there. So yeah, that was just kind of, I don't know, it was interesting to me. It just sometimes the way we talk about players and immediately trying to feed into the narratives. And I'm super curious, for example, if let's say Liga Martins had another wonder goal in the first half, and there was no big quote unquote mistake that had been made, would we be feeding into the same narrative of oh, this is Ashley Lawrence's fault?
And that another thing about that is, I also want commentators to give players a lot more credit than they do blame, because first of all, that's Liga Martins. She good. Okay,
they were good. Only one of two players who were not on just from Spain.
Right, she real good. So she's gonna be a hard matchup, and if you're not completely in sync with your back line, that's gonna happen. If your back line lets you down and lets the ball get to her, or put you in a bad spot while you're out of position a little bit, that's gonna look bad as well. So I just think that when you have these world-class players, it's much more useful to talk about what they did well, as opposed to trying to break down an entire sequence that had multiple breakdowns and saying reducing it down to just one player's mistake, because it really isn't. And to me, it's more fair to talk about the good of the players, what players did well. And Liga Martins, her first goal, I love. She took that so early. It was a floated shot, but it was flat. It was perfectly placed.
It was so good.
It was really, really good. And I think Ashley, in an ideal scenario, Ashley Lawrence would be in front of her. She wouldn't allow that shot, all that stuff. But again, that's Liga Martins. She's good. She's gonna do that to quite a few fullbacks. And I think, like you said, once that became the thing, the next time the same player scores, it's oh, Ashley Lawrence. And it's well, nah, man, that's not exactly it. So yeah, I want to see more players praised, because we can do the analysis after the match, and we will. But I still think that even in the analysis, for me, the analysis point of it is Liga Martins is real good, and PSG didn't have a great plan to cope with her, or Caroline Graham Hansen either. So
Right. Yeah, and I think, and also like, I mean, I kind of mentioned earlier that Alana Cook wasn't in that back line where, and so Ashley Lawrence took her spot, and then when the changes happened, then Ashley Lawrence got pushed up and kind of, I don't necessarily know if that's her natural position, but I do remember, for example, when she was playing against Lyon, she was like really, really good from that spot, kind of more pushed up. And so, yeah, to me, it like, obviously there were mistakes made, but it also comes down to like game plan and tactics and personnel, and like just having like, I mean, I don't want to bring Chelsea men into this, but unless you have like a Jorginho where he just almost passes the ball straight into the net, like it's rarely ever just like one huge calamity, you know?
Yeah. Why'd you say that name?
Sorry, but I'm not sorry. But I mean, that's also just like, to me, a very recent example of like one player just doing something like that. It's like, this is 1000% your fault. And the funny thing about that also was people being like, it wasn't his fault. And everyone was like, what do you watch? Like, what?
Well, that's why I think it's really important to watch soccer in terms of sequences, like phases and sequences, because you have to take an entire phase of play. And I think it's a perfect illustration, even though I hate that you brought up Jorginho and that goal and losing to Arsenal really makes me upset, but you did. But that entire sequence started from Jorginho making that pass. And so that's where it begins. And so, yeah, that's when you can point out, to your point, like that's a single player error that really caused the problem. I think in other situations, you really have to take the entire phase of play into consideration. And we're not great at doing that. I think even some analysts aren't great at doing that, like post game analysts, but certainly like in game, like live analysis rarely does that. And I would like to see more of it because it would really help.
Yeah, I completely agree. So wrapping up here, who are your, I kind of mentioned mine for at least Barcelona, but who are your players from Barcelona and Chelsea that you think are going to be, I mean, people love right now using the phrase game changers, but who are your game changers?
Game changers. So I want to give a shout out to two people because my analysis is going to be based on learning from them. Arvind, who writes for Managing Madrid, did a good breakdown of an El Clasico that happened in January. Full disclosure, Barcelona won that 4-1. That ain't the point. Read the
I was
piece.
like, probably I felt like by 17 goals. I feel like they just now win every game by 17 goals.
Right. They just start with an automatic 3. It's 3-0 whenever they start. So, but yeah, so there was that. And then there was Kieran Doyle, who also did a good video about how he believes Chelsea should approach the match. I think they persuaded me. Both were talking about a 4-4-2 diamond and giving examples of how Barcelona has struggled with that. In that Real Madrid match, even though it was 4-1, Real Madrid created a ton of high turnovers, and it was just them not being fluid in the box and not really being able to connect, and their forwards not really being able to read the turnovers well and make good runs. Barcelona's transition defense is pretty good too, but I mean, when you turn the ball over like just outside of the box, that's got to at least be a shot that the keeper has to save. Right. And it wasn't. I think one, like they just booted it out of play. The other one was blocked by a center back, I think. So there were like multiple opportunities where if that's Chelsea, they get a shot on goal. And I would put a lot of money on them converting at least one of those chances, at least one. So in that system, and Chelsea is familiar with pressing in multiple systems, and a 4-4-2 diamond is one of their most familiar ones. And it's one of their most effective ones, I think. That's when Emma Hayes really dropped G from that number 10 role and put her deeper in midfield. Or kind of, she's either been on the left, it's either been G or Gua Wrighton on the left, or Aaron Cuthbert. But it's really Pernille Harder in the center. And I think that she's going to be so key. I think Fran Kirby and Sam Kerr are going to be waiting for these turnover opportunities. They're going to be waiting for whether the high press creates a turnover and they can start running, or when Chelsea's in possession, Pernille Harder coming in and being that extra person to help break the press. And if she can turn in midfield quickly and distribute the ball, I think she's going to be so key in possession and out of possession to giving Chelsea numbers advantages, but also with her pressing. So I am really looking at Pernille Harder to have a big match, or at least be very influential. And for Barcelona, honestly, It's kind of difficult because, well, I can cheat. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna say Caroline Graham Hansen. Whoever we put at left back, hopefully it's not Jonna Anderson. Sorry, I just don't think that like that would be fair. We need somebody who's going to be able to kind of pin her back, at least with positioning. And Jonna Anderson's natural ability is to play defensive. So whether it's Neve Charles, whether it's Jess Carter, I don't know who's going to be on the left. Hopefully they find a way to bracket that too and give like some backup help on that side. But Caroline Graham Hands is going to be really big. And then I think Barcelona missing Andrea Pereira because she got a yellow card in the semifinal. She's going to miss the final. That's half of their center back pairing. So they're going to have to make a substitution there. Might even force them to go three at the back. Doubtful, but they're going to have to figure out a way to do that. So one player on the pitch, one player off the pitch. I do think both are going to have big roles.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for me, just like even talking more generally about Chelsea, I think their major, like the one thing they just really, really need to do in looking at, especially that first PSG match where PSG, like, honestly, probably should have ended 3-1 to PSG. When they were looking the most dominant on goal, besides, unfortunately, just like set plays, like that's honestly just like when, for example, that's like how Alana Cook got her goal, like that was just off a set play. But also that high pressing system is going to be really, really important, and just, being in their face and not letting them drop off, because that's when we saw both turnovers to play the ball right through to Katoto. So yeah, definitely that. And just like, honestly, like as a general phrase, just like disruption, just like disrupt, don't do anything else. And I mean, for Barcelona, like, unfortunately, it's as simple as them just like playing their game. Like they are just a very, very good side and they play to their strengths, like what we were mentioning before, that that out wide play, even though it kind of seems like they can score from just about anywhere on the pitch, but especially that out wide play and really forcing and like, and I think actually in the first half, PSG kind of played into their hands of them really trying to stretch defenses by, switching the ball quickly or just getting it out wide and having really their wide players like Martins and Caroline Graham Hansen just like running at people and just like making like probably unfortunately making like a highlight reel of just having defenders on skates. But yeah, I think for me, like for Chelsea to win, they just can't let Barcelona play their game, and for Barcelona to win, they just kind of need to beat Barcelona.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point, because Barcelona needs to do what they do and has to like force Chelsea to show that they can stop it. A lot of teams haven't been able, I won't say a lot of teams so far, no team has been able to stop it. Like they've been incredible all season. No losses in the league. They're amazing. So no draws in the league either. They win every match. So like and that's what they've played 26 so far, I think. They're 26-0-0. Yeah. So like that's what they need to do. If they galaxy brain it, I will thank them. But I don't think they need to do that. I think Chelsea needs to prove that they can absorb Barcelona's pressure and be dangerous. And that is a lot to ask against this Barcelona team. But I really think you also brought up a really good point in set pieces. Bayern Munich is a pretty tall team and really good in the air. And I don't think we saw that until Chelsea's second from final goal of the tie, when Jess Carter got Pernille Harder that shot. And it took a variation of service that we hadn't seen before. Yeah. I ain't talking about hadn't seen before in the match. I ain't seen them do that all season. So like that was a completely different thing that they just pulled out of nowhere from that spot on the pitch. But I do think that Barcelona won't have that advantage that Bayern had. So Chelsea should be able to, like, set pieces are going to be huge. If Chelsea can like sneak a goal on a set piece, whether it's Magda, Millie Bright is great in the air as well. Pernille Harder is great in the air. She's tall. We know Sam Kerr is great in the air. That's how she scores a ton of her goals too. So like there are a lot of players to aim for. And if Chelsea can grab a goal from there, they can really put a lot of pressure on Barcelona and open them up. And if they open them up and that space starts coming and they start getting risky with their passes, I think that's how things can tilt. But Chelsea has to do something first, whereas Barcelona just has to play their game.
Yeah, and I forgot to shout out my player of the match, who I think is going to have a really, really big game. And for me, that's Sam Kerr, Golden Boot winner. Gotta mention Golden Boot winner, 3 different leagues, 3 different continents. That is fundamentally insane. Just
scoring goals on multiple continents, like it's no big deal.
As I used to say as a young, like when I was younger with my friends, I used to say cray cray bananas. That is literally insane. But I think it's actually really important because she is going to, at least from what we're thinking of how Chelsea is going to beat Barcelona, really triggering that counter press, but also just like, and we kind of mentioned how PSG really suffered from not having Diani, but just having Sam Kerr just like float a little bit, just on the inside shoulder of one of your center backs, just being there to be like not only just like a little bit annoying, but just like having another thing that your back line is going to have to think about. And so for me, I think having Sam Kerr and her speed, ability, and honestly all of it, but I think Sam Kerr is going to have a really, really big game, and also just whoever is playing us outside back. I'm sorry, like y'all have been struggling, like not even y'all have been struggling, like people have just been coming at you the past few weeks. Just I feel like kind of actually like between Man City and the Bayern legs, and even like Wolfsburg, it was just like people have been coming at y'all. But whoever is playing outside back, particularly for me, whoever is playing left back, no, whoever's playing right back. Honestly, both.
I was gonna say it doesn't really matter, but left back is kind of the one, particularly in this match, because that's where Caroline Graham-Hansen is going to be matched up. So
1,000%. Andre, anything else that you want to add about the match?
Only that I'm shook. I think Chelsea has had such a great season. They've had to overcome a lot, and really, once it got tight, that tie versus Atletico Madrid got crazy. It required Berger making a couple like penalty saves.
I forgot about that.
It just got ridiculous. Yeah, like it's been a ride in the Champions League. They got by Wolfsburg, who has been their like primary blockade to the final. They got by them. That was emotional. Then they lose the first leg against Bayern, and they come back and get that emotional win, and they still gotta get up for league matches to secure the title, and they do. Like, after going through all that, I'm like, it would just be so rude but that's life, right? Like, Disney don't write this stuff. It's real life. So Barcelona's, and I don't have any problem saying this, Barcelona's an unprecedented team. We ain't seen a team like this before. Like, that goal differential is bonkers. The way that they attack is bonkers. The way they just dominate teams is wild. They didn't even really turn themselves up in the second leg against Manchester City because they didn't even have to.
I know.
Like, that's how much they did, how much good work they did in the first leg. So, like, I'm shook. I want Chelsea to do it. I think there are scenarios where Chelsea can do it. But overall, like, on paper, like I said, I still think Barcelona's favorite.
Yeah, I completely agree. Also, unfortunately, Chelsea did not have a pool party after winning the league like Bayern did. I saw that and I was like, also they're on the sea, and I was like, I miss Spain all of my heart. But yeah, I agree. It's going to be a really, really good game. Be sure to tune in this Sunday at 3 p.m. on Paramount Plus. But also, actually, you can tune in a little earlier because we're going to have a pregame show, which I'm excited about, and we're going to have a postgame show. Look at all that content.
Look at that. We looking. Are people treating women's football professionally? Are you kidding me? Is that what just happened?
So yeah, be sure to tune in. We will be live tweeting it and stress sweating the entire time. At least I know I am, and I speak for myself in that way.
No, you speak for me as well. Don't at me. I will be having a very difficult time in life. So just leave me alone.
I'll be having the greatest time in life or the worst time in life. There's truly no in between. And so, that's it from us. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to listen to our most recent episode of the pod where we talked about the Challenge Cup, or we reviewed the Challenge Cup final and the Challenge Cup as a whole, and then previewed the season coming up, which already it almost feels like none of it matters because there's been so much news in the past 2 days.
So much news. like we got to record another podcast. It's like 2 hours because like just so much keeps happening.
And I'm like, look, I tweeted it out as a joke yesterday saying me trying to keep up with the news before these two finals, but instead it's still happening. So thanks so much for listening. We really, really appreciate it. We'll catch you on the flip side.